Having sacrificed so much for democracy, why do Iraqis care so little about their vote? The count is underway in Iraq's parliamentary elections, but with voter turnout estimated at around 1/3. How should candidates feel about their mandate? And can any new government bring real change to Iraq? I'm Andrea Sankey, and today's Newsmaker is Iraq's election. Though Iraqi voters may not take their leaders very seriously, the work of Iraqi parliamentarians is nevertheless crucial. Between a water crisis, the threat of extremists, and managing external influence among sectarian divide, the job is daunting at best. Still, for most Iraqis, boycotting the election best expresses their desire for real change. Complaints of corruption and kleptocracy abound, and even with different faces on the ballot, including a record number of women, many say it's simply recycling the same political elite who are more interested in taking care of themselves than the people. Here's a look.
Over 21 million Iraqis were eligible to vote in the country's 6th parliamentary election since the fall of Saddam Hussein. A pivotal contest in a nation shaped by sectarian divides, economic strain, and competing regional pressures. Nearly 8,000 candidates vied for 329 seats, but public confidence is low. Turnout had been forecast to fall to around a third of eligible voters, likely dropping even below the record low 41% seen in 2021. It reflects deep frustration with a system many believe has failed to deliver basic services or curb entrenched corruption. Adding to the uncertainty was the absence of one of Iraq's most influential blocs. The movement led by cleric Muqtada al-Sadr boycotted the vote, removing a major force from Shia politics and deepening questions over the legitimacy of the next government.
Following Muqtada al-Sadr's directives, we are boycotting the elections due to the absence of essential services. Young people are struggling with unemployment, and there are no adequate hospitals or schools. We, the youth, are enduring severe hardship.
Beyond the boycott, Iraq's broader challenges remain unchanged. Economic hardship, power shortages, and weak public services have left a large young population disillusioned with political elites. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani is seeking a second term, backed by the coordination framework, Iraq's dominant Shia coalition. His bloc is expected to secure the largest share of seats, but internal fractures within the coalition mean retaining the premiership is far from assured. Beyond the Shia blocs, Iraq's political map is shifting elsewhere too. The Sunni landscape is in flux, with the Taqadum movement trying to regain ground after internal rifts and reassert influence in Baghdad and the West. Further north, politics in the semi-autonomous Kurdish region remain defined by the long-running rivalry between the KDP and the PUK. Whichever side gains momentum after the vote will play an outsized role in shaping coalition arithmetic in Baghdad. This election also unfolded under competing external pressures. The United States is urging Baghdad to rein in armed factions aligned with Tehran. Iran, Iraq's powerful neighbor, is determined to preserve its influence through political allies. Both deny meddling in Iraq's affairs, even as Tehran weighed in on what the vote means for the country's future.
Iraq's elections are important for determining the future of the Iraqi people. Any foreign interference in such a process is condemned and unacceptable by the people and government of Iraq and by other responsible countries. US interference is certainly harmful. History shows that whenever the United States has intervened, the result has been damage to peace and stability in that country and in the entire region.
For many Iraqis, the day ended with more caution than celebration, shaped by doubts in a system still struggling to regain trust. And as ballots are counted, Iraqis now watch to see whether this new parliament will move the country forward or leave it fixed in the patterns of its recent past.
So what will this election deliver, and is democracy actually working in Iraq? Well, joining me now to debate that and more are from Baghdad, head of the House of Iraqi Expertise Foundation, Ahmed Rushdi. Also from the Iraqi capital, senior Iraq analyst at the International Crisis Group, Lahib Higel. And from Washington, director of the Future of the DHS Project at the Atlantic Council, S Warrick. Thanks all so much for being with me. Ahmed, I'll start with you. We don't know the results just yet, but what we do know is that voter turnout was again abysmally low. And in most cases, it's not out of laziness or apathy. It's actually deliberate. So what message does mass boycott of the election really send to the candidates? And is it worth it for voters not to vote, or do you think it backfires?
Well, it's a political position for the Iraqis. Is that they are boycotting, yes. According to IHAC, the Electoral Committee said that at the midday it's only reached 30%, which I think it's less than 30%. And also with what Muqtada Sadr said is that boycotting because don't give a chance to the corrupted politicians to get benefit from the next period of the Iraq life. Also, it's supported the feeling of the people. But again, even there is a participation, the problem is with the formation of the government rather than a political position for the Iraqis. So we have two main problems. The first one is the boycott. The second one is the formation of the government. So it will give a support to who boycott this election, is that if the formation of the government will be long enough, it will say, or they will say as a boycotter, is that we did right. We didn't participate in the elections. Look what's happening. It's a long way to form a government.
Well, let me ask Lahib, boycott or not, those elected will still take their seats, even if no one wants them. So is democracy working in Iraq?
It's working as an electoral system, obviously, and has done so for the past 6 elections. But as a democratic culture, it is not working very well. There's been a fairly peaceful transition of power, and increasingly so over the years. But voter turnout has been dropping for each election. And I think that, unfortunately, the Iraqis are saying that they don't really have faith in this system anymore. And we saw that very clearly with the 2019-2020 Tishreen protests, whereby some of these people tried to topple the system, others tried to join it. But also in the last elections that they entered, it didn't go very well for them. It didn't result in an increasing diversity of voices. What we've seen is that the old traditional political elites are the ones that have entrenched themselves, and that will win again. Apologies, now the electricity went out in Baghdad.
Kind of symbolic of the state of affairs, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah. Well, Lahib, let me ask you this. We're just going to look at some pictures of the election as it's unfolding. But, Iraqis that I've spoken to have told me it's actually not the government that is responsible for any improvement or any stability, but rather the people working together in spite of the government, and that they have decided to stop fighting and circumvent their politicians altogether to make things work. Do you see that happening there?
I mean, I think that is a big part of the story, of course, that Iraqis are very resilient and view themselves as such, and manage to have some sort of functioning society in spite of the dysfunction of the system. But I think that there is also a segment, at least today, that would say that actually this government has made some improvements. And I think that speaks to the popularity of the incumbent prime minister, who over the last few years has done some tangible changes, at least in the urban infrastructure in Baghdad. But it's not at all enough for the type of infrastructure upgrades that the country really needs. And that is just speaking about basic services like water provision or electricity.
Right. I'd like to talk a little further about the water crisis if we have the time. But let me ask Tom first, how much you think Iraq still actually needs participation from the international community? And I'm using the word participation in spite of others actually labeling it interference. What are really, if you believe there are, the competing interests coming from abroad that either helps or hinders democracy in Iraq?
Well, the fundamental difference is between Iran's role in Iraqi politics and everybody else's roles in Iraqi politics. Countries like Turkey have contributed enormously to the economic rebirth of northern Iraq. There's substantial Turkish investment that could be unlocked in other aspects of Iraq's economy. Arab countries are engaged with Iraq, whereas they weren't for many years. The United States and other Western countries would like to invest, but they are concerned about the influence of Iran, especially its control over the militias in Iraq that have launched attacks against U.S. forces and civilian elements, and especially the effort to try to keep Western businesses from investing in Iraq in preference to what Iran has been doing. So it is Iran against the rest of the world when it comes to outside influence in Iraq.
Let me ask Ahmed if you see it that way.
Yeah, I think Tom is right. What we need now in Iraq is a big participation from the international community, from the US, from Europe to rehabilitate our economy. Actually, we don't have an economy. Only oil that we are selling and get the money, 70%, 65% of its salaries for the public servants. That's it. This is the Iraqi economy. So the problem is that we need to be engaged with the international community as economical aspect, but it's always it is connected to the political aspects, and we all know that Iran has some sort of intervention in Iraq, and also the problem is that the sanctions that Iran suffer from now, and the lung for the Iranian economy is Iraq. So you can imagine how much it is not feasible for the Iraqi economy to be more free and to have more participation from the international community. This is first. The second thing is that when, just I said from the beginning, it is the problem of the formation of the government. If the government, let's say 90% of the next Iraqi government will have the consideration of the Iranian interest rather than the Iraqi interest, it will be also a problem, because eventually we will have also sanctions. So how we can deal with that without the help of the international community, without the help of the US, of the European countries, and so on. So actually, the next government will have a huge challenges. How to rebalance things for the sake of Iraq.
Okay. Lahib, I need your opinion on this. I mean, is it fair to say it's Iran against the rest of the world in Iraq? Because the Shia population might argue that it's their support base that provides the votes. Well, now he's left the political fold as a boycott measure of Muqtada al-Sadr, but that is their legitimate interest. This is what those voters want, and they are a significant part of the population, and Iran is arguably welcome.
I don't think necessarily that the involvement or interference of Iran in Iraqi politics is a reflection of what the average Iraqi wants. That is a result of political opportunism that many Iraqi, especially, of course, Shia politicians, have relied on Iran for many years, and those relations are difficult to cut. But even within the Shia political establishment, there is a spectrum, and not all of them are, on the same distance in terms of their relations with Iran. I would say that this government and some of the previous governments have been more willing to lean towards the West. But as Ahmed was saying, they need to strike a balance. I think this time around, the U.S. pressure is much more serious. It has shown that it can use sanctions. It has also shown that it can use its military strength against these groups, which we've seen over the last 2 years of regional escalation. And I think the message has been received. So I think going forward, whoever is elected prime minister, that person will have to strike that balance. And I think from now on, we might actually see a little bit of a receding in terms of Iranian involvement, also if they want to preserve themselves, right?
Okay, so Tom, I mean, how difficult will that balance be to achieve in a way that won't, I guess, agitate those in the Trump administration right now?
Well, let me be very clear, Andrea, that the Trump administration seems to be determined to upend the balance and to say that the balance is not working for the people of Iraq nor for the region generally, and it needs to be changed. But Washington doesn't have the tools of influence that it once did, or even in fact that Iran does today. So it's not clear how this is going to be achieved. But Washington is going to push to say that Iran's defeat in the 12-day war means that its influence needs to be less than it once was. And so I do expect there will be pressure brought by Washington, number one, to make sure that the new government has leaders who are prepared to change the status quo and to move it closer towards where the Iraqi people were in 2019 and not the way things have been since 2004.
Okay. Let me ask then, Ahmed, because the question for many Iraqi voters is whether or not the government can actually be reformed structurally, because many of them are not satisfied with how it functions and the sectarian representation that is there. Unfortunately, it looks like we've lost Lahib. But can the government, Ahmed, can the government be reformed so that it is not controlled by sectarian influence and then by default external influence?
Well, Andrea, let's be honest on that way. It cannot be happen on that on this aspect. It's one of the three scenarios. Scenario number one is that Prime Minister, the President, the Speaker, all of them can be pro-Iranian. The second scenario is that the Prime Minister can be neutral, while the President and the Speaker can be pro-Iranian. The third scenario is that it will stay on that way. Soudani will stay Prime Minister, the Speaker will be Mashhadani, the President Rashid, and there will be no formation of a new government for a long, long time, maybe a year, 2 years, no one knows. Because as we all know, is that the Iranian always focusing on time, going forward to go more time, to give more time to form a government, or at least to bring MPs and to have a speaker, then to have a president who will who will elect the candidate for the prime minister. So it's a long, long way. And we all know that the Republican inside the Congress, inside the political process, the American political process, maybe they will.
Okay, it looks like we've lost both Ahmed and Lahib. So Tom, I'll come back to you. Yeah, if you could speak as well to the potential for restructuring the government, and if you think that would help, I don't want to say stabilize Iraq, because Iraq is doing relatively well right now, but
yes,
at least help with, combat this voter apathy that is genuinely extreme. I mean, really extreme. When you have 2/3 at best of the voters not participating, can there be reforms that would actually bring the voters back into the fold?
Yes. So let's separate this into two tracks, because this is the way it's likely to be approached. The first track is going to be exactly as Ahmed was just saying, getting the economy moving, in making improvements to the lives of everyday Iraqis. This is going to be the focus of the government program, whoever is elected. And to some extent, it's independent of the precise alignment of the major political figures, although it will be a lot easier for those who are more nationalistic or Western in their orientation rather than those who look to the East. But the average Iraqi wants to see reliable electricity, wants to see drinkable water, and understands that Iraq is rich in oil and gas. It has enormous assets from the two rivers that have flowed through Iraq for centuries, and people want to see the benefits of that kind of effort. The second track, however, is the hope for the future. And this starts with academics and civil society talking about constitutional reform. You cannot make too much out of the fact that part of the problem is that the current system, which admittedly the United States set up in 2003, 2004, and 2005, has produced this political gridlock that Washington now complains about. But the solution is going to have to come from Iraqis talking about constitutional reform in ways that preserves Iraq's federal character. There will always be differences between northern Iraq and the rest of Iraq, and those should be respected in many ways. And indeed, many say that the provisions of the 2005 Constitution haven't been fully implemented. That's a whole separate story.
Okay.
But the mechanics of government formation are what is really holding the country back. It should not take 6 months to pick a prime minister. And in Iraq, as we've all been discussing, right now, the election day today is not the end of the political process like it is in Turkey or United States or most European countries. It's actually the start of the political process, the bargaining over who gets what positions.
Okay.
And constitutional reform is the way out.
Okay, and it seems we do have Ahmed back online. So Ahmed, let me come back to what the reality on the ground is in Iraq, and what do most Iraqis need now from their leaders? Take us through kind of, the fundamental asks, whether it's, part of the water crisis, issues with sectarianism, even extremism, because you've got 60% now of the population below 30, but still one of the highest unemployment rates in the region. And the concern is that that is just a powder keg really waiting to explode.
Well, Andrea, what we need now is the formation of the new government as soon as possible, because formation of new government, it will give a hope for Iraqis, is that, okay, guys, we are going forward. We have some sort of strategic roadmap to start to rehabilitate all the errors that happened before. Now, what I'm talking about is idealist. I think it's not going to happen on that way, because there are so many things should happen before that, before the formation of the government.
Yeah, the structural issues with the government you've described, they are incredibly challenging. I'm asking about people's daily lives in Iraq and how much they're not going to have much patience for structural reform of the government. And the issues for them on a daily basis are so pressing, as I mentioned, not least the water crisis, for example. What could be, the straw that kind of breaks the camel's back for them? They've done well so far dealing with a government that they don't find effective at all and not even worth the effort to go to the polls for. But are you concerned that unemployment, for example, is going to bring this young population to the brink?
Yes, of course. Maybe demonstration will happen if the Iraqi government didn't form as soon as possible. And maybe, which is also can be happen, demonstration supported by the Sadrists. Because the Sadrists said there is no way to have a real, feasible, and honesty political process in Iraq. That's why they boycott the elections. And it shows you that it's just like a knife on the neck for the political process if the formation of the next Iraqi government will take a long, long time. People will not be patient anymore. They boycott the elections, and they will say to those who participate in the elections that we were right. because you can see they cannot form a government. So you can imagine the challenges on the head and on the shoulder of the next government, next prime minister, because he will suffer a lot from three main things. Number one, ordinary Iraqis' demand. Number two, regional complexity. Number three, the international community and their help. If the Iranian influence will stay still there is no real help from the international community. So you can imagine how much it is very difficult the next maybe 6 months.
Okay. Ahmed, that will have to be the final word for this edition of the Newsmakers. Unfortunately, we couldn't get Lahib back, but I'd like to thank both of you so much for being with us and our viewers for joining us as well. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and do be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'm Andrea Sankey. We'll see you next time.